Thank you. I feel very honoured to be on this platform, so thank you. If everyone can mute, that would be really great. Thank you. My story started in 1930. In the 30s, if you got pregnant out of wedlock, the community judgment was extreme. The shame was very hurtful. My grandmother fell pregnant out of wedlock. This forced my grandmother and grandfather to marry. That's how my father came to be. He was born on the 3rd of July, 1930. My grandmother blamed my father for the shame, embarrassment and humiliation she felt and made sure my father never forgot that feeling. Over the years, my father tried to win his mother's love, but he was never able to. When my father was 22 years old, he said to his mum, "I will go to Belgium and work in the mines and will send all my money back to you. Use half the money for yourself and the family, the other half saved for me on my return." 3 years later, he returns in 1955. On his return, he asked his mum for his money. She said, "How dare you even think you can ask? You're an embarrassment to this family. I wish I never had you. There is no money for you." How do you respond to that? My father was heartbroken, hurt, and very angry. Out of anger, he bought a one-way ticket to Australia. Maria, my mum, was living in Sicily. She experienced abuse from her father and grandfather. It was common for immigrants to want to meet ladies from their home country. Maria heard of this and found my father through a dating agency and started writing to him. 2.5 years later, Maria buys a one-way ticket to travel to a country she'd never been, to marry a man she'd never met. Now, I call that courage. She arrives on Boxing Day 1960. The first night in the lucky country, the land of opportunity, as they said, she rolls over and cries herself to sleep. The next day, my mum insists that they married, as they had sex out of wedlock. Later that year, they have their first child, a boy. My father was a jealous, possessive man. He would control her mood any time she made friends. By now, depression is setting in. She cannot bear the loneliness, no friends, and moving all the time. And said, "How dare you? I'm working hard for the family. Why do you not appreciate me?" How much pain must a woman be in to be 7 months pregnant with her second child and decide to kill herself? By jumping into a well as she was about to jump in, my father grabbed her by the hair and threw her to the ground. As the due date was fast approaching, my mum wanted a baby girl. And she'd hoped having a girl would make her life worth living, something to focus on and something to look forward to. At 4:07 p.m. on the 9th of February 1963, Maria was so disappointed in giving birth to a baby boy. That boy was me. My mum's wish for a baby girl happened on the 15th of August 1966. She gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl, Anna Maria, my sister. In the 60s, it was common for women to prop up a bottle with a pillow and feed the baby. On the 2nd of August 1966, she did just that. She gave Anna Maria the bottle, popped it up with the pillow and left the room. When she came back, Anna Maria was choking on the milk. My mum became frantic, calling out for my dad, who was working on the farm. By the time the ambulance got Anna Maria to the hospital, Anna Maria had passed away. She had choked on the milk. My mum overheard the doctor saying they will need an autopsy. My mum thought they were blaming her. My mum couldn't speak English. I can't imagine the pain my mum was in, losing her baby girl, feeling responsible and living with a controlling, abusive man. 6 months later, just after my 4th birthday, I was home alone with my mum. I couldn't find her anywhere. I started searching her. I found her on the bedroom floor, unconscious. I pushed, pulled, wake up, Mum. I was 4, terrified. I didn't know what to do. Finally exhausted, I fall asleep on my mum. My dad found me when he got home from work. He called an ambulance and they got her to the hospital where they pumped her stomach from the pill she took. To attempt to kill yourself in that time, they called you mad. My mum had lost her voice forever to my dad. My mum was locked up in Mayday Hills Mental Institution in Beechworth. I can remember looking at my mum through a 12 by 12 inch glass window as we were leaving Mayday Hills Mental Institution. I remember feeling her pain, her despair, her loneliness. She just wanted to come home and she just wanted somebody to love her. By the next year, my mum was on psychiatric medication. Both her and my dad were alcoholics. My mum and dad went into detox and I stayed at the O'Briens for 2 weeks. I remember Mrs. O'Brien and her kindness. She asked me what I wanted to do. No one had ever asked me. I was scared, terrified, but she knew exactly how to make me feel. She took me bareback horse riding. How cool was that? So much fun. But one day, Mrs. O'Brien made me feel like a king. She was kind, gentle, and loving. Once we returned home, we found all our furniture had been removed from the house and stored in the garage. As I was the smallest child, my dad put me through the window so we can unlock the door. Not too long after, 3 men pull up. I could see my father was angry as he confronted the men. They beat the shit out of him. My mother pulled the knife out of her dress, like who puts a knife down there, and went at the men. They knocked her out cold with 1 punch to the face. I was 5 years old. I had to do something, so I grabbed an axe. I actually go to the 3 men with this axe. One of the men grabbed me by the head and said, "This fight's not for you, son." We were evicted. Mrs. O'Brien, the lady who was so kind, allowed us to sleep in her dairy on the concrete floor until we found suitable housing some 10 kilometres closer to town. I'm now 6 years old. And my mum was frantic, panicking, and asked me to help her. "Eugene, please help me," she says. "Pray with me. We're all going to die." My mum was very religious and believed in the flood. And she believed, and her voices were telling her that we're all going to drown. And so she's asking me to support her. I get down on my knees, terrified, and pray with her. I was so scared because I couldn't swim. But I couldn't show my mum I was scared. This went on month after month after month. I was visiting my mum in Mayday Hills Hospital. I was 12 years old. The interpreter didn't show up this day and they asked me to interpret, which of course I volunteered. I agreed, and after some basic questions about health and general well-being, the nurse asked me to ask my mum, was there anything else? Is there anything she would like us to know? I asked my mum and she said, "Yes, there is. Can you please tell the nurse to ask my husband to stop raping me? Because I don't like it." The nurse said, "Is there anything else?" My mum said no, and she said, "We'll see you next time." The sad truth was that what my mum said was the truth, but because she was a paranoid schizophrenic, they didn't believe her. My father wanted sex, and my mum would say no. My dad would wake me up, and get me to bring wine to both of them, until my mum was so drunk that she couldn't resist, and my dad would do whatever he wanted to her sexually, without any regard for my mum, for myself, or my brother. It really messes with your mind when you know what is happening is wrong, but the mental health system did nothing. So what are you meant to think when you're 12? It really fucks with your mind. Fast forward to when I'm 15 years old. My father pushed my mum off a set of stairs. That was it. I was finally old enough, I couldn't let this happen anymore. I grabbed my father, threw him up against the wall and said, "That is the last time you will ever hurt my mother." Moments later, he comes out holding a 12-inch knife. I remember looking at my father and believing that he would stop, that he would not hurt me. Have you ever felt that level of certainty? So I stood there. Before I could take my next breath, he strikes the knife in my chest, cutting my chest as I fall to the ground. He strikes again and again. He wanted me dead. When I look up at my father, my mind could not comprehend what was happening. My certainty turned to fear, then terror. I thought I was about to die. I somehow managed to get away and get the police. 8 to 10 years jail for attempted murder, they said. As the police handcuffed my father to the bed, my mum led me into the other room and said, "You would not charge Dad with attempted murder." My sole purpose was to care for my mother. I was never more lost than in that moment. My inner star stopped shining that day. I don't know what took more of my life, my dad trying to kill me, my mum supporting him, or the police and the system doing nothing. That day I took on the belief that if I stand up for what I believe in, I will die. I'm not worthy of being supported, and I'll be abandoned no matter what I do. Fast forward to 2020, I'm fired from my executive role. I have an argument with my son, so I decide to leave my home. I get a phone call saying, "This is on me. I need to fix it." I was so lost I didn't know what to do, and my marriage was over. I recreated the same belief as when I was 15. The difference this time was it was not my father trying to kill me. It was me. Since 1996, I've been searching for that feeling I felt when I was 5 years old. I've completed over 3,000 hours of therapy and personal development work trying to rebuild and unleash my inner star so I could feel that feeling again. Would you believe it was ineffective? The more work I completed, the darker the light became. Until I admitted myself into Delmore Private Psychiatric Hospital for 3 weeks, where I leveraged my past learnings combined with the hospital expertise to finally complete my puzzle. Who wants to play with a kid whose mum tried to kill herself 5 times, who was locked up in a mental institution and missed over 60% of his schooling to care for his paranoid schizophrenic mum? He was never allowed to go on one excursion because his mum was scared he'd hurt himself. Never attended or was invited to one party. His father was a violent alcoholic. Nobody wanted to play with that kid. I was so lonely. I was different from all of you. I built an armour so thick no one could penetrate it. My breakthrough came when I took the armour off, looked into my heart, and allowed myself to feel my pain. I had to understand my experiences, the meaning I gave them, radically accept them, and to forgive. Forgive them and forgive myself. I let no one see my demons, my pain, my fear, the shame, and the worthlessness I carried, how it has tormented me my whole life. Instead, I thought I had to be strong, had to be the problem solver, the fixer of all things. That was all I knew, until I lost everything. My executive role, my family, my marriage, my self-respect, and what little dignity I had left. On the 6th of July, I took my first Valium ever. 17 hours later, if the police didn't find me, I would be dead. The Valium broke through my armour and brought to the surface my original trauma. It was the first time I felt the pain of my father trying to kill me and my mum supporting him instead of me. Like, who wants to feel that? Which collided with my current situation of losing my executive role, my family, my marriage, my self-respect, my self-control, mind, and my dignity. It was the most painful feeling I'd ever experienced. My heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. I just wanted someone to make it stop. On the 7th of July at 3:42 p.m, I decided to make it stop. Eric Garrison talks about the 5 stages of human development. In my experience, if your needs are not met, your development not provided, you had some challenging experiences in any of the 5 stages, then you can activate three of the greatest human fears. Fear that you're not lovable, that you're not good enough, and that you do not belong. I got all the human fears. I was not loved, not good enough, and I never belonged anywhere. No one teaches you what I needed. A one-stop shop for limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. I searched for answers outside of myself and in others, but nothing I wanted was out there. I realized that you cannot get rid of your experiences or your trauma. What you do is find the meaning you gave them, you neutralize them, turn them into your superpowers. I learned that I have to love myself before anyone can love me. I found my inner peace. I'm incredibly grateful that every experience has shaped who I am today. I've lost 15 kilos. My blood pressure has plummeted from 210 over 130 at its highest to no longer needing blood pressure medication. Who would have thought one act of kindness would change my life? That one day of kindness when I was 5 years old. I would not have known what to look for. I would have given up a long, long time ago. I am worthy. I am lovable, and I do belong. I've created a master blueprint on how to overcome limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. If I can do this from where I came from, then it is possible for anyone, no matter what happened to you, to overcome limiting beliefs, fear, trauma, or missing development. My grandmother hurt my father, and my father hurt me and my mum. My great-grandfather and grandfather hurt my mum. My mum hurt me. I hurt my family and my children, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Hurt people until they stop and love themselves first. Thank you.
Whoa. What did you guys think of that presentation? Let's have a discussion.
Sorry.
He is a powerful speaker. You know, a lot of times we come across men and don't realize the issues that they have gone through in their lives. And we decided to include men on the HerStory platform so we could hear the other perspective, hear their stories as well. So if anybody wants to contribute to the conversation, please just put your hand up and I'll call you. Let's have a conversation around this amazing speaker's story. Yes, Marissa.
Yes, it is very clear to me that he developed a post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's very difficult to get rid of it once you go through it. But the beautiful thing about it is that he didn't let his suffering destroy him. He brought his suffering to us, to the public, and that empowers us to believe and to hope that if something similar happens to us, we also can survive and we can do much better than what our ancestors did.
Thank you for that. Very true.
Welcome.
A lot of times we look at men who are tough, who are strong, and we don't realize that they have created this shield around themselves to protect themselves from something that has happened in the past. Violet, you wanted to say something. Just unmute yourself. I had muted everybody a few minutes ago.
Okay, cool. The story was very heavy and very deep. I'm a girl in South Africa, and I could relate with a whole lot of things that he said. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so when he spoke about the grandmother being forced to get married because she was pregnant outside marriage, it's something that we are still living with today in 2021. Where it's frowned upon, it brings shame to the family of the girl if a kid. I can say that I am one of those girls who got pregnant outside marriage, and I thank my parents that even though marriage was put on the table, they said, not now, she's not ready. As a young girl, I was 25, pregnant. You're going through a whole lot of things as a person, as an individual. And to be thrown into a marriage at that time will never work. So we're living in today, 2021. It's still happening. And such marriages never last because most of the time the foundation of it was just wrong. He also spoke about the mother then choosing the husband over him. That's something that's still happening. Like in my case, I was told you'll never find a man who will marry you with a kid. Rather stick to this guy that you had a kid with, even though he was not treating you well. And I prayed, I was like, Lord, if it doesn't happen, then I'll stay with my kid forever. But then I was blessed with a husband who loved my kid like crazy. And we're still married now for 8 years. And I've got 2 sons and I'm done. But the thing is, I'm amazed that, oh my word, these things are still happening, because he spoke about it like it was 1960, way back then. And I'm like, are we really? And I also started something just a few months ago called the linkage. And what the linkage is for me, I'm saying we need to trace back and uproot certain things because we cannot take them to the next generation. So if we don't speak about this, I don't bring it to the table that, listen, you can still make it in life if you have a kid outside marriage. I'm not encouraging it, but I'm saying if it happens, we shouldn't make marriage the best option when the person is still developing. So I'm encouraged. I'm like, wow. Actually, for me, it's like it's broadening that it's not just a South African thing or a black thing. That this is huge. This is still happening, and people need to know that you don't have to take the routes that's put on the. That's not the only route that you can take to be a better person. So yeah, yes.
Yeah, his story for me, his grandmother's story is very similar to mine. Like you, I got pregnant out of wedlock. I was 22. I just left Africa, went to London to get my first degree. I left home in October. In December, my boyfriend came to visit and I got pregnant. And I remember the shame I felt. I had to come back home to Zimbabwe, and you can imagine I come from a very small town. Everybody was talking about it. But I was blessed with a father who empowered me. He forced me to go back on the streets of my hometown and be proud of my son. So my son is the first grandchild. And my father's mother also had an illegitimate child, which was him. So he knew what his mother's shame was like. And he told me never to be ashamed of my son. He would literally kick me out of the house and say, go to the supermarket, go and get some groceries, because I was staying at home. I was feeling so much shame. And if it wasn't for my amazing father, he told me to hold my head up high and to carry my baby with pride, and that he was nothing to be ashamed of. So that was my personal experience. I did end up getting married to that guy. We had 27 amazing years, 3 beautiful children. We did divorce after 27 years, but we had a good run. Jan, unmute and give us your feedback. Let's see if I can unmute you. There we go.
Yes, there I am. Excellent. Wow. First feedback is you don't look old enough to have been divorced for 20 or married for 27 years at one stage.
Thank you. Hair dye does help.
Well, yeah, it can all take a little help sometimes. I mean, yeah, the guy has come through just things which are beyond belief for many of us. You know, it's dazzling stuff. You know, and beyond some comprehension. You know, some of the things that have happened to me are not as bad as anything he's been discussing. But I have to say that it's you know, that even the things that have happened to me similarly are not things I talk about. I do stick to talking about promoting how women can get into business, even, you know, from a background that they haven't, you know, had any training or anything else, and encourage people and indeed overcome a bit of men's violence in the business and one or two other things. But on a personal level, I don't ever talk about my life, I'm afraid. And I didn't know whether to interrupt and say, can I check this now? Because it may mean I'm irrelevant as a speaker.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's all about these personal experiences. And what we're trying to do with the Her Story platform is to bring women's stories to the fore. 25% of the men who speak on our platform are, 25% of the speakers are male. And we launched in 2019 with 100 speakers in Las Vegas, had an event here in Wellington, another 100 speakers, Sydney, Australia. We went to Norway, we came to London, we went to New York, and then COVID happened. We had another 2 in-person events in Auckland and Hamilton, and now we've put our platform online. So we are looking for women's stories. We believe that we can change the world through our stories, one woman at a time, one story at a time. And sometimes your story becomes the light at the end of the tunnel for somebody else who's
I
going
agree.
through a struggle.
Mm.
In Africa, we actually believe that a problem shared is a problem halved, that the minute you tell your problem to someone else, they hold it with you. It's no longer yours to carry alone. And what we have found since we launched is so much healing. We're getting people starting to connect and collaborate globally. And I'm excited that you are the first people to come onto my show today as we unroll on this amazing platform called E360 TV. We were trying to find a way to amplify all of these stories in a bigger way. And through a magical series of little synchronicities, somebody put us onto E360 TV. So this recording is being broadcast on a platform that has 54% female reach. They get about 300 to 500,000 monthly views. They will broadcast this video to Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Android, ISO, Facebook, and YouTube. So I will be sending you the link so you can share it with family and friends who might have missed the show and show them that you participated. Please go onto our website, the HerStoryCircle.com website, and register to be a speaker. You record a 15-minute presentation, very similar to what Eugene has done. We will edit it and we will share it at our next online summit. So we have a summit in 1 month. In the next month, we run workshops. So right now we're in the middle of a summit. I'll be coming back online tonight. We are on US Pacific time, 9 a.m. on the 23rd in the United States. And we will be having a panel of speakers who are presenting at that summit. We'll have 10 presenters. We're going all the way until the 27th with this particular online summit. I am still looking for speakers. So Violet, Jan, Marissa, if you're inspired, go onto the website, HerStoryCircle.com, register, and then record your 15-minute presentation. Send me the video through WeTransfer, and we will include you in this current summit as well. So now I want you guys to get to know me a little bit and get to know my backstory. I am going to share my very first TED Talk. And when we come back, we'll have a little bit of a discussion around that presentation, the current pandemic that we're living through now, and that will be the end of this particular show. So I'm going to again share my screen. We'll watch one more 15-minute video and we'll come back and have a discussion. I'll see you soon. So just mute yourselves because I was told that we're getting feedback and sound in the background. If you don't know where to do that, I will mute you, Jan. There we go. Yvonne's already muted. Okay, so we'll be back in 15 minutes again. Here we go.
You can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. In my native language, I would say to you, Masikati Masquerasei, which literally translated means, good afternoon, how has been your day? You were all looking at the stage for me, but you were looking in the wrong place. Ubuntu. Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu literally translated means a person is only a person through other people. So before I start, I would like you to look to your left and look to your right. And if you don't know the person you're sitting next to, look them in the eye, introduce yourself, find out their name, find out where they're from, because I will be sharing with you an African philosophy, which is very close to my heart. So my full name is Gertrude Ruadzano Munyaradzi Mache. Did not want to challenge DK with all my names, but I was born on one of the most fascinating continents in the world. Africa is a harsh continent, but it prepares you to live anywhere. Up until the 22nd of April 2004, I had not quite known what my life purpose was. It was 2 weeks before the launch of my first book, and I woke up that morning with words in my head that had to go down on paper. And I went to my computer and I started writing. And I realized at that point that my voice, my body, my very being in this incarnation is merely a channel the Creator is using to awaken the world. A lot of people ask me, Gertrude, are you the typical African woman? I can tell you bluntly now that no, I am not. What I do know is that I was born to be her voice and the voice of her children. Let me tell you a little bit about the typical African woman. In my country, and when I say my country, I'm referring to the continent of Africa, from north to south. The typical African woman is at the bottom of the food chain. The typical African woman is always the last to eat. Her role in society is to bear the children, fetch the water, fetch the firewood, make the fire, prepare the fields for sowing, sow the seed, and harvest. And in most situations, she does this single-handedly. And at the end of her exhausting day, she is the last to eat the leftovers of her prepared meals. In my country, the typical African woman is sometimes physically and psychologically abused. In times of war, she is raped, and she personifies the downtrodden human being. Now, while all this is happening to her,
She asks you, where are you, my father, when my education is sacrificed? Where are you, my brother, when I toil in the field and in the kitchen? Where are you, my mother, when my genitals are cut from my body with a sharp knife? Where are you, my sister? Where are you, my aunt? It is your hands, your strength that pins me down. In times of war, when I am gang raped, sometimes by 5, 6, 10 men, where are you, my father, when I am violated? Where are you, my God? Where are you, my fellow human beings? Why do you allow this to happen to me? Now, because I'm not the typical African woman, I want to share with you today the spiritual journey that has been my life. I was born in a small village called Wedza on the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe and Mozambique. It is the kind of place where you are born there, you will die there, you'll amount to absolutely nothing. But I was blessed to have two amazing parents who realized that if they educated their children, we would get out of poverty. So from the age of 6, my mother taught me how to use my hands. I was taught how to knit, how to sew, how to crochet, how to fabric paint. And we would make crafts and go and sell in all the white neighborhoods. And from the age of 6, I went to private school. I got a good education. And that's how I got to New Zealand. So you must be wondering how I got here. I keep telling people the wind blew me here. I had no intention to come to Wellington. But through a weird series of little coincidences, I missed a flight going to America just before September 11. I was sent back to Zimbabwe, ended up in Wellington because I had a cousin who was living in Karori, who says she was surfing on the internet one day, picked up my name, wrote me a one-line email saying, "Gertrude, where are you? You need to leave Zimbabwe. Come to New Zealand, you won't regret it." So as an act of faith, we sold everything we owned, and I got to Wellington on the 1st of November, 2001. And from the day I landed in this city, my life has been magical. I found a job working as a systems analyst in Lower Hutt, and it was awesome. But my husband could not get work here because he was a doctor. He had to wait 1 year to get accreditation with the Medical Council of New Zealand. So he found a job in Australia, in Mount Isa. When he got to Queensland, he called home. He said, "Gertrude, stay where you are." He said they had put him in a rural outpost. There wasn't even a road to this place. So he commuted and came home once a month for the first year. And I was losing it. I had 3 kids under the age of 12. And I approached my boss one day to see if I could renegotiate my work hours so I could work from home in the afternoon, go to the office in the morning. The day I approached my boss, he was in a very bad mood. This man stood in his office and said, "Gertrude, you don't have a choice. It's either you stay or you go." And I stood in this man's office and I realized that he was forcing me to choose between my children and work, and my babies are not negotiable. So I quit my job, went back to my art, started painting my fabric. I painted 100 meters of material. I went all over Wellington trying to sell this fabric. The fabric would not sell. Everywhere I went, people would look at it and say, "It's beautiful, but can you paint ferns?" Or, "Can you paint fish?" I come from a landlocked country. I was painting zebras and giraffes and African animals and trying to sell an African product, and it wasn't working. Then one night I had a dream. I dreamt of my grandmother who had died 10 years before this, but she is my spiritual guide. She came to me speaking fluent English. She hated English, but she stood there with her hands on her hips and she said to me, "Gertrude, if you have a problem, break it up into small pieces." 2 a.m. in the morning, that dream made no sense. When I woke up, I realized what the dream meant. I got my scissors and I cut the fabric into small pieces and I started making cushions. I made 1,000 cushions and sold 1,000 cushions in 3 months using a website. My first business in New Zealand was a small shop that sold hand-painted cushions. It was absolutely magical. My kids could walk home from school and come to the shop in the afternoon. My next company was created because of my husband. When he was job hunting, I saw hundreds of vacancies for health professionals in New Zealand. So I wrote back to Africa to all our friends, told them where we were. 5 of my husband's friends said, yes, we'll come to New Zealand. I placed 5 doctors and have been in business since 2002. I had had so many opportunities by being in this city. I went to a presentation where Peter Jackson's staff were talking about how they made Lord of the Rings. And I'm sitting in the audience thinking, gosh, I wouldn't mind acting in one of Peter Jackson's films. So when we had the question answer session, I put up my hand and I asked the question. I said, look, I know you're working on new movies. How can I take part? I used to be an actress in Zimbabwe. They told me to email my CV, which I did. 2 days later, I was cast to take part in King Kong. And when I went for my wardrobe fitting, I found out that they were looking for 350 African extras for one scene. And I thought, shoot, this is a business. And I said, look, if I come up with 350 people, I would like to present it to you as a business case. They said, sure, come on Tuesday. I met this man on a Thursday. I had 1 weekend to run around Wellington with a digital camera hitting on anyone brown. I stopped Indian people, Maori people. They had to spray paint us one color so we looked like we were one tribe. And I turned that into a business, and I have a casting agency that caters for ethnic minority people for film and advertising. The real reason why I'm here is because of this woman. Christmas 2004, Oprah went to South Africa. I was having Christmas lunch. My parents had come from Zimbabwe for the first time, and a girlfriend called me and said, Gertrude, switch on the TV, Oprah's in South Africa. And there she stood on a soccer field full of children. She had 50,000 AIDS orphans on that soccer field. And when she opened up her hands, she said, this is the lost generation of Africa. These are kids who will never get to go to school. They've either lost one parent or both because of AIDS. Africa needs help. And that show took me back home. I remembered what I left behind. I sat with my mum and I said, let's do a head count of the orphaned children on our side of the family. We counted 49. I called my mother-in-law, did a head count on her side, another 40. And I said to my husband, I have to find a way that we can make money that we can give away unconditionally. So I finished writing my first book and started raising money by selling this book. I started looking at the children's faces and I started imagining that, what if the scientists will find the cure for AIDS is in one of these kids? What if I took part in helping raise the future Nelson Mandela for Africa? And that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years. The Mayor of Wellington launched my book in the Mayor's Chambers. The book is called Born on the Continent Ubuntu. And what I did is I illustrated the Ubuntu philosophy through the stories and the people that I met. We sleepwalk through life most of the time. We meet people sitting next to us, we never find out who they are. In Africa, when you meet someone, you look them in the eye, you greet them, you acknowledge their humanity. You will never bump into another human being and not acknowledge their humanity and their presence. So that became my story. I am because you are. The human race is one. In Ubuntu, there is no you, there is no me, there is only we. My grandmother used to say that the world's problems are very simple. If every single person on this planet heard that there is an earthquake in Haiti and we each gave $1 to Haiti, that would be a country restored in one day. Why are we dying of starvation in the developing world and you are dying of obesity in the developed world? There is enough. There is enough in this universe to go round. But we have forgotten this. So my project took me on a journey. My friends here in New Zealand agreed to come with me for the first time to Zimbabwe. It was when the recession hit. I could not fundraise. There was no money to send back home. And I challenged these three ladies to raise $10,000 each and come on a magical trip. I turned that into another business. It's called Walk on the Wild Side Tours. But when we got to Zimbabwe, we managed to restore the primary school where my husband went to school and where his father used to teach. There are 280 kids in this school. 70% have either lost one parent or both. We managed to paint the school. The community came. We started giving people microloans to make bricks. All the women in the community who know how to sew have been taught to make the school uniforms for the kids. And it's now a project that is lifting an entire community from the grassroots level up. We're now supporting an orphanage in Bulawayo that has under 12-year-olds. The baby that I'm holding in the corner died 2 weeks after I got back to New Zealand. And I keep looking at that picture as a reminder that I have to keep going. We end our trip after 10 days of living in a community with no electricity, no running water in the Victoria Falls. You go bungee jumping off the Victoria Falls Bridge. I've done it 3 times on the same day. You get this adrenaline rush and you just want to go back for a second hit, for a third hit. My husband and kids had to stop me the 4th time. You go for a walk in the bush with these amazing animals. Africa is a fascinating place. It's the only place in the world where you can get so close to nature. There's a protocol on how to walk with these lions. You have to walk behind them, not in front, otherwise you'll lunge. And we end our trip teaching you all kinds of things in terms of our culture. We do the game drives at night and at day. And we all come back to New Zealand and you get your tribal markings and you become part of our tribe. This is my baby brother. He was born when I was 13 years old, and I remember Mum would put this baby on my back and I'd look after him for her. But he died of AIDS in March 2009. By the time I got to Zimbabwe, my brother was 6'2". He was 48 kgs in weight. And I had the honor of nursing him before he died. And the gift he gave me was that he showed me a psychological side to AIDS that I had not seen. This disease is more psychological than it is physical. And as a people, as the African people, we have bought the story that if you are HIV positive, you're going to die. That is why we're dying by the thousands. And I realize now while I'm in New Zealand that I have to go back to Africa to tell a different story. I have to help my people change their minds around this disease. So I went back to school. I did a course at Avalon Studios, and I started working on a movie script based on my life and based on the AIDS story. This movie is going to win 8 Oscars. I made a decision when I started 7 years ago that I am the first African person to write, direct, and produce an Oscar award-winning screenplay. When I first said this, I was shaking in my shoes. When I said it a second time, it felt so good. I said it the third time, it felt so real. And now all I have to do is finish writing the script. AIDS is a consciousness. Poverty is a consciousness. Each time I go back to Zimbabwe, I realize that we are sitting on the acres of diamonds and we don't even recognize it. Somewhere in our history, we were told that we are poor, and we believed it. I come from the richest continent in the world, and I am going to go back to tell a different story. Thank you.
So that is my story. Let's just unpack the story. If you guys have any questions, what's really pivotal for me when I look back at this presentation, this was done almost 15 years ago, is that we're in the middle of another pandemic right now. And when I used to share my story here in New Zealand, Australia, when I traveled around the world as a professional speaker, I could tell that people couldn't quite relate to what I was talking about. How many people I knew who had died of AIDS. My grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins, including my baby brother, died of AIDS. When I came here 20 years ago, there were 49 orphaned children on my side of the family alone, another 40 on my ex-husband's side. So when I wrote that book, I was just trying to support family members. And now we are in the middle of a second pandemic. This is my second pandemic. And I sometimes look at what is happening in the world, and I think COVID is a gift to humanity in a very, very strange way. For the first time in humanity's history, we are having a shared experience. Nobody can come out of this and say they don't know what COVID is about. They don't know somebody who died of this disease. A lot of times, a lot of these diseases happen in third world countries, in the developing countries, and people in the West have no idea what we are going through. And when I was writing this movie script, I could tell that people won't be able to relate to us as a people, to our issues in developing countries. I remember telling a story of going to a graveyard. 2 weeks before I came to New Zealand, one of my cousins died. And I went to the same graveyard with 2 bunches of flowers. I had to walk 2 kilometers to find the previous grave. That's the rate that people were dying in the 80s, in the 90s. And now we're seeing it all over the world. We're having a shared experience with COVID. So unmute, ladies. Let's have a little conversation around that before we finish this show. What is your take on my presentation? What is your take on what is happening with COVID around the world right now?
Your presentation was sad, but very uplifting. At least I wasn't crying by the end of it, because it had so much packed into it. The pandemic, COVID. I always say COVID showed us flames, guys. None of us expected what's happening and what has happened. I always say, if you come out of COVID the same person you were before 2020, something is wrong with you. I think it's a time for self-reflection. We need to really dig into ourselves. Honestly speaking, if you are a rude person, please, can COVID do something to you? COVID has come to clean up, and by the time it's done, I really pray and hope that we'll have a better world and better relationships. I've seen people die like flies. I mean, it was scary to even get out of the house. It was that bad. Family members, even worse, because we couldn't even go to the funerals. So we are getting to know ourselves better, but I think the amount of depression as well is just. I lost the I lost a sister, my brother's wife. She committed suicide last year during this whole thing, COVID thing. So this time to be alone has not been as good for everyone. It has just, a lot of things are just coming up. And I really hope that by the end of COVID, we'll have a better relationship with ourselves first and then with others. And I really hope it ends soon. I'm tired of COVID. I'm really exhausted. It's not nice.
Now, Violet, you're in South Africa, and people need to know what is happening in the developing countries. Marissa and I are here in New Zealand. We are in the most fortunate position in the world. We have had 25 deaths. 1,500 approximately infected, and everybody is now fine. We are COVID free. We can go to the supermarkets. We don't wear masks. We don't social distance. And this is just because we had the right kind of leadership. Our prime minister is an incredible human being. Everybody complied. We all stayed home for 3 months from March, April, May, and we came out of it. We've had a few isolated infections here and there, but they're isolating it. Within 2 or 3 weeks, we go back to normal again. Marissa, I want you to chime in here and give me what's been your experience.
Yes, the first about the AIDS, there was a lot of prejudice against AIDS. First, it was because it emerged from the African continent, and then the second prejudice was that I remember very clearly. I was in Brazil talking to one of the authorities in infectious diseases, and he was attacking gay men as being the scapegoat of this crisis. So it took decades to eliminate those prejudices from the masses consciousness. Now, with COVID-19 is a different story because it doesn't matter if you're black, white, blue, yellow, if you live in Africa or if you're in Brazil, it gets everyone the same way. So it's no different than AIDS, but this is what the media is showing us. So it has been our opportunity to realize that being human doesn't matter where you are or what you look like. We are all vulnerable, and the strength is in bonding together for a better outcome for everyone. Now, I do agree with you, Gertrude, that we are very insulated here regarding COVID-19. My family in Brazil, I have lots of members who work in the health system, and it's a nightmare for them. But here too, we have had problems that didn't go on the media. I work in mental health, and people don't know how the power of the impact of being locked up for 3 months on people, because it makes you vulnerable, it makes you isolated. It's not human nature to live in an isolated way. And luckily, the media didn't make a big hoo-ha out of it, because it would have been much worse. So we are here to learn, and I love, seeing that we are becoming more and more supportive of one another, regardless of who we are. So that's all I have to share. Now, I don't know if you're going to post this. I'm lying down. I worked all night last night. I read your invitation at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I thought I'm going to attend. So
Thank
I'm not
you.
looking the best.
You're actually live right now. The whole world is seeing you, and we're okay with that. So, just a warning to anybody who comes on my show, the show is live, but I love it because you were exhausted, you came online, and I really want my show to be one of those shows where you feel at home. It's like you're sitting on my couch here in Wellington and we're having a conversation. If you want to lie back, you can lie back and do that. But it's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful to have you here, Marissa. I should have warned you. It is a live show. And when I saw you lying down, I thought you might be exhausted. I'm exhausted myself. I've been online during the online summit. I actually slept at 5:30 this morning, switched on my alarm. I woke up to come and do the show because this is our debut show. So don't worry about it. It's beautiful that
Thank
you're
you.
here.
Thank
So one
you.
of the other things that I think COVID has done for us as human beings is this. My grandmother used to try and describe the Ubuntu philosophy in this way. She would say that the human race is like the human body, that we are part of the same whole, we are cells of the same entity. And she would say, if you cut your finger and you start to bleed, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. In a week's time, you can't even see the scar. And that's how we should be responding to each other in the world. So that if the 7 billion people on this planet hear that there's an earthquake in Haiti, and we each give just $1 to Haiti, we can restore that country in a day. With COVID, we're illustrating the same thing here. We're literally a breath away from affecting and infecting each other. If one person on the planet is not okay right now, we're all not okay. And for those people who are refusing to wear the masks, to social distance, it's not about you. It's about everybody else around you. It's about the greater whole. And that's why you're finding in countries like the United States, where people are fighting for their rights, their civil rights not to wear a mask, they're missing the point. I've been interviewing a lot of people in the US who have had family members who've died, who didn't believe in this, saying it's a hoax, it's not true. And they ended up affecting and infecting their own family members who have died. And the regret that comes with that. So COVID has really come to give us pause as the human race.
Sure.
That we are so interconnected and so intertwined. There is no separation between us. We are part of the same whole. But a lot of people don't understand what humanity really is. The condition of being human. Ubuntu, ngamuntu, ngabantu, when you literally translate the word, it is I am because you are. That we are reflections of each other. Without you, I do not exist. And without me, you do not exist either. So I think that's going to be the blessing. It is a pity that we are having to pay this price to be woken up. Mother Earth has stopped us. The universe, God, whatever created all that is, has given us pause. And the gifts that it gave me personally, it helped me prioritize what's really important in my life. I had just lost my father in 2018. On the 29th of March this year, I lost my mother-in-law. My husband comes from Poland. He could not go back home to bury his mother. 3 weeks later, I lost my mother in Zimbabwe. I could not go back home to bury my mother. A couple of months later, my daughter got pregnant. I was celebrating the coming of my first grandchild. My daughter had a miscarriage. So I started to reflect what's really important in my life. It's my family first. I have never been closer to my children than now. The next thing is community. You know, I've lived in a country where people are very friendly, but don't really connect in the same way we do in Africa. I know the neighbors to the left of my house, to the right of my house, and the ones directly opposite me. But the people in the rest of my street, if you're lucky on a day when you're going for a walk, they might nod and greet you. I don't know their names. They don't know me. When COVID happened, somebody in my street came and dropped letters in every single household. This man and his wife introduced themselves. They gave us their cell phone numbers. They created a Facebook group for my street and said, if anybody needs help, if you need someone to go to the supermarket for you, if you're not feeling well and you need help, this is our phone number. They united our street in the most magical way. I've lived here for 21 years. I don't know any of my other neighbors until last year. So do you know who lives in your street? The elderly people who are needing help with going to pick up a medical prescription or somebody to go to the supermarket for them. So your community comes next. The next step is the rest of the world. What can we do from wherever we are to help other people? I've managed to start projects through my platform, going back home to Zimbabwe. I have communities in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean, and other parts of Africa that we are able to help, sitting here in the privileged position we have in New Zealand. We're raising money by curating all of the stories of these amazing people who are coming to speak and share their stories. We've created a magazine. We have created an anthology series of books that we sell. And we are supporting small grassroots projects. It could be somebody who says to me, Gertrude, there's a woman in my community, in my village, who is feeding the homeless. And we donate $5,000, $10,000 to somebody who is doing something in their community to help around COVID. When we launched, our focus was around women and children primarily. We've now extended it to the elderly, the homeless, and the disabled. So what are you doing to help other people in parts of the world where they need help? Brazil, India, Africa, there are countries that there are no social welfare systems, there are no healthcare systems. The numbers that are being reflected in Africa are just estimates. My brother tells me that in villages in Africa right now, people are dying. The numbers are not accurate. What are we doing to help? What are we doing to reach out? So this, for me, is a call to anybody out there who's hearing this message this morning. Get in touch with us. My email is gertrude@herstorycircle.com. If you want to know about the projects that we are supporting, we are going to be highlighting them on our website, so that if you want to contribute in any small way, you can do so and make a difference somewhere else in the world. It's a time for us to stop thinking about you, about me and my family, and think about we, us as a race globally. So thank you, ladies, so much for being a part of my first show on the E360 TV platform. I will share this link if you give me your email addresses in the chat, and I will share the replay so that you can share this on your social media platforms. I'm going to be back again tomorrow, 12 noon New Zealand time, or it will be, 12 noon USA time, Pacific time, so that we can start reaching the world, sharing the stories of what is actually happening all over the world. Thank you, Marissa. And thank you, Violet, for being here. Thank you to everybody who is listening. And thank you to E360 TV for helping to amplify our voices and our stories. We are eternally grateful to you. Have a fantastic day, ladies. I hope that I will meet you soon. I see we have Imelda. Imelda, sorry you came in late. If you want to come on video, switch on your video. Yvonne, I see you're still here. If you just want to pop in and say goodbye. Thank you for being around. Thank you for being on this show. Bye
Thank
for
you
now.
so much, Spirit. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Bye.
you.